Under the Trump-aligned administration, the White House sparked controversy in Japan when Press Secretary Caroline Leete claimed that Japan imposed a 700% tariff on American rice. This statement, presented as evidence of excessive tariffs by U.S. trade partners, followed a pattern of strong rhetoric that had strained international relations. Leete stated that President Trump supported the principle of reciprocity and emphasized the need for a president who would protect the interests of American businesses and workers. This statement was intended to support the administration's protectionist trade stance, including the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum from Canada. However, the claim about Japan's rice tariff was a misrepresentation of Japanese trade policy. In reality, the 700% tariff applied only to a small portion of rice imports that fell outside of existing World Trade Organization (WTO) agreements. Since 1995, Japan has maintained a minimum access agreement that allows for 770,000 metric tons of rice to be imported annually without tariffs. The United States has benefited significantly from this system, providing approximately 350,000 tons of rice to Japan in 2023. Actual tariff on rice imported outside the WTO framework is closer to 400%, according to market prices reported by Nikkei, not 700%, as stated by the White House. This difference highlighted the administration's pattern of adjusting data to support its narrative, which further strained relationships with key allies. In response, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi explained the complexities of Japan's rice import policies and stressed the importance of the minimum access framework. He also noted that while Japan does not respond to every statement from U.S. officials, they wished to maintain communication with the U.S. government. His careful response reflected Japan's need to navigate sensitive diplomatic ground in response to inaccurate and assertive comments from the Trump administration. The White House's portrayal of Japan's trade policies illustrated broader damage to international relationships during Trump's presidency. By emphasizing populist messages over accurate information, the administration affected the credibility of U.S. trade relations and created a challenging environment for allies who had to deal with confusion and mistrust. What do you think the impact of such miscommunications is on global trade? Share your views below. Let's discuss how these statements affect diplomatic trust and international economic cooperation. Support our channel by subscribing to help others stay informed on current issues. Now, let's move on. The next development may surprise you. From the shifting economic scene within the White House, Tesla, led by Elon Musk, faced a significant contrast in first-quarter vehicle sales compared to China's BYD. European consumers appeared to be turning away from the American brand. BYD reported a 58% surge in vehicle sales, delivering 986,968 passenger vehicles, including 416,388 fully electric vehicles, a 39% increase. This strong performance followed BYD's annual sales surpassing $100 billion, driven by strong demand for hybrid vehicles in China and a major push into international markets. In contrast, analysts forecasted a more than 10% drop in Tesla's first-quarter sales, citing lower demand in key European markets such as France and Sweden, even after the release of a major model update. This decline led to questions about whether the downturn was due to a response to Musk's political actions or due to the aging of Tesla's product lineup amid growing competition. Analysts from institutions like Deutsche Bank significantly lowered their expectations for Tesla's deliveries. Deutsche Bank estimated 345,000 vehicles, a year-on-year drop of 11%. RBC Capital Markets also projected lower deliveries, estimating 364,000 units. Deutsche Bank further commented that, beyond the numbers, there appeared to be additional underlying concerns. Brand damage is occurring in Western Europe and in certain parts of the US and Canada, linked to Elon Musk's political actions, which in turn are affecting demand. Tesla's vehicles and dealerships have become targets for protest in both the US and Europe. This is a direct result of Musk's unprecedented involvement in European politics and his notable influence at the White House. Although Tesla is generally seen as well-positioned to handle potential tariff conflicts due to its manufacturing operations in the US, the company remains exposed because it depends on components from other countries. Tesla has previously warned that tariffs imposed by Trump could lead to retaliatory actions and higher production costs in the US despite the recent release of the upgraded Model Y in China and Europe. Registration data shows a sharp drop in sales in key European markets. In France, new car registrations declined by 37% year-over-year in March, while in Sweden, they dropped by 64%. This significant contrast in sales performance between BYD and Tesla highlights the potential risks tied to Musk's increasingly political public image and its influence on consumer sentiment. Given Elon Musk's expanding political involvement and its perceived effect on Tesla's European sales, how do you view the link between corporate leadership and political activism when it comes to consumer decisions? Do you think a CEO's political views should influence what people buy? Share your thoughts and join the discussion below. New developments within the White House's shifting sphere of influence have set new targets for Doge. Elon Musk, the world's richest person and the head of the controversial Doge department, announced his plan to investigate what he described as the puzzling accumulation of wealth by lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Speaking at a town hall in Wisconsin, Musk said his department would examine the financial records of members of Congress, questioning how they have acquired generational wealth despite relatively modest public salaries. He suggested a complex financial process, saying government funds were sent abroad to NGOs, circulated among several groups, and then, according to him, returned to the US, ending up with the same lawmakers. He added that this was a roundabout path, not direct, but implied that some members of Congress had suspiciously large amounts of wealth and that he was trying to understand how they became so rich. This statement was made despite the fact that regular members of Congress earn $174,000 annually. Musk, whose net worth is estimated at $330 billion, has previously shown inconsistent views on congressional pay, first opposing a raise, then later supporting it as an anti-corruption measure. In reality, several long-serving lawmakers have built significant fortunes. Examples include former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, with an estimated net worth of around $250 million, and Senator Rick Scott, whose personal wealth is roughly $552 million. Pelosi's wealth is primarily tied to investments she and her husband made in major tech companies, while Scott's wealth comes from co-founding HCA Healthcare and his earlier business ventures before joining the Senate. Musk's question, how do they get $20 million if they're earning $200,000 a year, and his intention to investigate and stop such outcomes raise serious questions about transparency and possible conflicts of interest in the U.S. government. His role in overseeing government efficiency, combined with his plan to look into lawmakers' finances, has sparked concern about the ethics of a billionaire holding such authority. Additionally, Musk's history of unpredictable comments and shifting policy positions leads some to question the impartiality of his proposed investigation. This situation further highlights how billionaires are playing a growing role in shaping government policy, raising concerns about conflicts of interest and weakening democratic principles. Given Elon Musk's vast wealth and influence, and his stated intention to investigate members of Congress, how concerned are you about possible conflicts of interest and the weakening of democratic norms? Do you think a billionaire should be responsible for investigating elected officials? Share your views and join the discussion below. Putin, the White House, and the familiar volatile rhetoric of the Trump era became the setting for a dramatic display of anger directed at Russian President Vladimir Putin. It was reported that Donald Trump, in a candid early morning phone call, expressed being very angry and upset about Putin's disparaging remarks regarding Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's leadership. Trump reportedly stated that Putin's comments were not going in the right location, signaling a rare public rebuke of the Russian leader. This outburst followed Putin's controversial call for a transitional government in Ukraine, a move widely seen as an attempt to destabilize and eventually remove Zelensky. In response, Trump reportedly threatened severe economic consequences, suggesting that if Russia and he could not reach a deal to end the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if he believed it was Russia's fault, though he acknowledged that might not be the case, he would impose secondary tariffs on all Russian oil. Trump outlined a plan to introduce significant tariffs, specifying that anyone purchasing Russian oil would be barred from doing business in the United States and that a 25% to 50% tariff would be applied to all Russian oil. This threat came despite President Joe Biden already implementing a ban on Russian oil imports in 2022, which had significantly reduced U.S. dependence on Russian energy. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2023 the U.S. imported only a minimal amount of Russian crude oil and petroleum products. Analysts from the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air noted that major importers of Russian oil include China, Turkey, Brazil, and India. It was suggested that these nations could be most affected by Trump's proposed secondary tariffs if he applied the same policy approach he had used with Venezuela. Donald Trump, who had campaigned on a promise to end the war in Ukraine, reportedly facilitated meetings between U.S., Ukrainian, and Russian officials in the early months of what he viewed as his second term. Last week, a limited ceasefire agreement was reached, allowing for safe passage in the Black Sea and a temporary halt to attacks on energy infrastructure. According to reports, Trump repeated his threat of a 25% tariff on oil and other products sold in the United States, secondary tariffs, claiming these measures would be enforced within a month if a full ceasefire was not achieved. Despite this public display of anger, Trump reportedly maintained that he has a very good relationship with Putin and that his anger subsides quickly if Putin does the right thing. The two leaders were said to be scheduled to speak again that week. This episode highlights the unpredictable nature of Trump's foreign policy, marked by personal relationships and impulsive decisions that often challenge diplomatic norms and alienate allies. Trump appears to be realizing that the deal he had long expected will not come to fruition. Most Republicans support Ukraine and condemn Russia, leaving him with little choice but to act accordingly. How do you believe President Trump could create more problems for Russia? So far, he seems only to be creating them for Ukraine. Share your thoughts and join the discussion below, but before we dive deeper into this explosive story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action that significantly helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos and spread this critical information to a broader audience. Hold on to your hat. The next development is something you absolutely won't see coming. New anti-Russian sanctions the White House, amidst growing bipartisan frustration with Russia's continued aggression. Witnessed Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal introducing legislation aimed at enforcing strong primary and secondary sanctions on Russia. This initiative, supported by a coalition of 50 lawmakers, proposed not only severe sanctions but also a 500% tariff on imports from countries that continue to purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other commodities, should Russia fail to commit to a lasting peace with Ukraine. In a public statement, the senators emphasized the punitive nature of these actions, stating that sanctions against Russia required tariffs on countries purchasing Russian oil, gas, uranium, and other goods, and that these measures were intentionally tough. They argued that this strong stance reflected the prevailing sentiment within the U.S. Senate, that Russia was the aggressor in the war.